They never won a championship in Atlanta. Me getting drafted there felt like a match made in heaven.
Again, there wasn't a real market for Trae Young, and he doesn't necessarily.
I want to win, but that's what you've heard too. Like, I just want to win. So if that's in Atlanta, that's where I want to be. That's where I envision myself being. But that's it.
Trae Young's situation with the Atlanta Hawks is one of the most unique situations I think we've ever seen in NBA history. On one hand, this is a team that is clearly trending towards a rebuild, but on the other hand, they have a future Hall of Fame point guard that hasn't even hit his prime yet. So what is the answer for the Atlanta Hawks? How do they get Trae Young into a situation to contend again, or should they move on from him altogether? Either way, the Atlanta Hawks are trapped, and so is Trae Young. Before we get to the content, we're giving away copies of NBA 2K25. All you have to do to be entered is subscribe and turn on our notifications for this channel. Now that we get all of that out of the way, cue the intro. If you follow me on Instagram at @TheFlightMike and followed my Friday night picks for Prize Picks, then you made yourself some money. Unfortunately, I didn't get as lucky with the free square, but luckily for us, we're getting another free square for week 2. And once again, it's with Caleb Williams. All Caleb Williams needs is one passing yard versus the Houston Texans for his square to hit. We just gotta pair this with something that we believe is guaranteed and we'll automatically make ourselves some money. I'm gonna post my Caleb Williams pick onto my Instagram story when a new board comes out. And guys, use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you play a game of $5 or more. You don't even need to win to get the $50. It's guaranteed. This game's really fun, especially if you're good at projecting how players are going to do. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I know what some people are thinking.
Mike, did you just say Trae Young is a future Hall of Fame point guard?
Well, listen to these statistics. Trae Young is one of only 2 players in NBA history to average more than 25 points per game and 9 assists per game. At 4th all-time in assists per game, he sits above names like Chris Paul, Steve Nash, Isaiah Thomas, and Jason Kidd. Simultaneously, he sits at 12th all-time in points per game, above players like Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Steph Curry. Yes, you heard that correctly. Trae Young is 4th all-time in assists per game and 12th all-time in points per game, yet despite his absurd statistical output, the soon-to-be 26-year-old's market value in the eyes of executives around the league has dropped so far that it's practically non-existent. And I know what all of you guys are thinking. How could this be? Why would this happen? And how did Trae Young get to this point? But before we keep going, just for some comparison, the only other player to ever average those same numbers throughout an entire career is none other than the Big O, who we should all be reminded from time to time averaged an insane 31, 10, and 10 as a rookie. But as for Trae Young, the 3-time All-Star who previously led the Hawks to being within 2 wins of the NBA Finals back in just 2021, who not only made Ben Simmons a shell of his former self, but just 1 series prior gave us an instant classic in Madison Square Garden where he was the most despised villain since Reggie Miller and caused an entire stadium to say this. How is it that he has seemingly been in trade discussions ever since? And at the same time, how has he not been traded given the way the Hawks offseason has gone? Trae Young's value has declined so much that he has even begun looking into the rear view of his still young career, and he had recently gone on record saying that if he had not gotten injured in Game 3 of the 2021 Eastern Conference Finals, Atlanta would have won their first title in team history. And to be honest, going back to that year, it's not the wildest take given the depth of the Atlanta Hawks, but we could discuss what ifs another time. This is a discussion for another day, because as things stand currently, the Hawks are not only getting laughed by the other top teams in the East, they're also getting passed by new and up-and-comers like Indiana and Orlando. This has put both Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks in a very unstable position, because while Trae Young has mentioned wanting to stay in Atlanta for the long term and win a championship or multiple championships to the same team he was drafted by, based on some recent reports from NBA insiders Brian Windhorst and Tim McMahon, the Hawks on the other hand have tried and struck out on dealing the former Sooner guard. The whole thing is a little crazy and even a little unfair depending on how you look at it. I mean, just imagine putting up numbers that can literally be compared equally and even better to many of the greatest players to ever play the game, and then having to deal with being stuck playing for a franchise that doesn't want or believe in you. Imagine if this was a relationship and you had to keep dating someone who literally tried in front of your face to monkey branch and then failed and came back to you, and you couldn't leave because you were under contract. That being said, Trae Young has been very mature in handling this situation. I mean, just look at how he handled this with Taylor Rooks.
So when you wake up and you go on your phone and you see all these rumors, take me into that moment. What does that feel like for you?
Some of the best players ever have been traded. So who am I to just be here mad or feeling unwanted or feeling a certain way? If you don't want me, then okay, then somebody else will.
So then I'll just ask plainly, do you believe that you will be in Atlanta next season?
Hopefully. Like, I could have went to Kentucky, I could have went to Kansas, but I chose to be different and went to Oklahoma to try to win a championship. They've never won a championship in Atlanta. Me getting drafted there felt like a match made in heaven. This is something I want to do. Like, I can defeat the odds here too. My whole envision was to always be here. Like, my whole goal is to win here, win championships, bring people here with me and build this dynasty here. But who knows? Like, it's year 6 now.
For you, these rumors are like, it's not me. You're like, I want to be in Atlanta.
I mean, yeah, you've heard it from the source. Like, I want to win, but that's what you've heard too. Like, I just want to win. So that's in Atlanta. That's where I want to be. That's where I envision myself being. But that's it.
But still, this is not to say that the Atlanta Hawks really care one way or another, or even that they should, because after all, the NBA is a big business, and so scouring the league to see what they could get in return for him is just part of today's game. But not only did they learn their star's true value in the eyes of others around the league, but now they find themselves having to deal with the aftermath of their team's best player and face of their franchise knowing all about it. Tim McMahon was even recently quoted in the Hoops Collective podcast saying the following.
The fact of the matter is, if there was a real market for Trae Young, he'd be somewhere else right now. It's not like they got some kind of wild blockbuster return for DeJounte Murray. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't anything comparable to some of the other star trades that
it was a bet again.
Guys, you know how I feel about the DeJounte Murray trade. I mean, I've said it multiple times throughout my content over the past couple of months. I don't think this was a trade. I think the Hawks and the Pelicans are colluding against the rest of the league. And I guess you could say I'm just a salty Laker fan. But the Hawks traded DeJounte Murray, one of the best two-way guards in the NBA, on a really good contract to the Pelicans in return for Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, and two of the most irrelevant draft picks we've ever seen. Well, one of them's an unprotected first-round pick from the Lakers in 2025, so maybe that turns out to be good. But I digress. Combined with all of the reasons that people claim are explanations for a 3-time All-Star not being able to find a new home, it all managed to provoke a fairly blatant response from Young, who took it upon himself to share his thoughts about the whole situation in a recent Instagram post where he blames the typical made-up NBA story cycle instead of his own porous defense. And not that there's not any truth to what he's saying, but his taking the initiative to do this is likely nothing more than a sign of him paying too much attention to the outside noise. What definitely doesn't help his case even further, though, is that there were several teams out there that many people believed could have seriously used Trae Young's services in order to take them to the next level and compete for a championship as soon as this season. Amongst them were teams that specifically had the necessary capital needed in order to get a deal done should they have so desired. At the top of the list were teams such as the Miami Heat, a team who many thought could be a perfect landing spot for him considering their culture, and would have given Jimmy Butler one final chance at bringing a title back to South Beach. The Los Angeles Lakers were also previously mentioned as a realistic landing spot to bring in Young. He would have been the final member of what would have formed a massive big three with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, but that didn't happen either. But easily the most notable and often talked landing spot was the San Antonio Spurs, a team that had Greg Popovich, who wanted to bring Trae Young in to be the Robin to Wemby's Batman, and they could have easily pulled the trigger. They had the assets to do so, but there was a huge problem.
But listen, like the San Antonio Spurs, if they wanted Trae Young, they easily could have gone and gotten him, and that wasn't even a bet on Trae Young as your best player. That was Trae Young as your second best player. So again, there wasn't a real market for Trae Young, and he doesn't necessarily need to reestablish a trade market for himself. But as you said, as extension talks are coming, I think he does have to reestablish his value. But honestly, it's a bad situation in Atlanta.
Like I said, to find out there's no market for you is one thing, but to do as a literal superstar is a whole other thing completely. It's not that Trae Young has yet reached the level of greatness and longevity that Paul Pierce did, but this kind of reminds me of when Pierce almost left Boston for Dallas in 2007, just before running mates Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen arrived. Pierce had already gone to 5 All-Star games and finished just out of the top 10 in MVP voting several times, yet he stuck around, and when help arrived, look what happened. Now, I'm not saying that a championship is guaranteed for Young if he remains in Atlanta for the long term, but I am saying that if #1 overall pick Zaccharie Risacher turns out to prove the doubters wrong and be better than people think, and if Jalen Johnson continues to improve like he did last year, then the Hawks, while surely not ready to compete for a championship, might not be in quite as bad of a position as many people think. Just don't tell that to the players around the league though, because if you ask them, they don't think much higher about Trae Young than the execs do. Just back in April, Trae Young was voted the 3rd most overrated player in the entire league, behind only Rudy Gobert and Jordan Poole. Truly elite company to be in. And while that might be a bit excessive, perhaps it's time to flip the way we're looking at this and turn our attention away from him and onto the organization he has played 6 years for. The team that traded away Luka Doncic to the Mavericks, as well as Danilo Gallinari and what amounted to 4 first-round picks in return for just 2 years of DeJounte Murray, now find themselves in a situation they would have rather avoided. And I have to say, after those decisions, in a way, they kind of deserve to be where they are. But regardless of the boneheaded mistakes their front office has made in the past, the question remains, where do they go from here? Do they continue to look for a trade for Trae Young, even if it means receiving less than they initially thought? Or do they move forward with the core they have in place and continue to build around him? And as many times as we have heard the previous rumors about players such as Karl Anthony Towns coming to join him, if I was a betting man and had to bet on any of these outcomes, I would bet that somehow they're going to find a way to send Trae Young elsewhere. If not this year, then soon after. If it somehow is truly not going to happen, if somehow this toxic marriage continues, then if we're speaking realistically, how could the Atlanta Hawks get better around Young, who by the way is up for a contract extension next year? One part of this could be getting rid of the defensive rock they've had in the middle for the past 4 seasons with Clint Capella. He just finished a campaign where he averaged a double-double for the 7th straight season while still being only 30 years old. He clearly has value, but with him coming up on the final year of his contract, to not get anything in return for him would add even more insult to injury. At a specific point, we have to start asking, how does Atlanta keep finding themselves in these terrible situations? Well, clearly, it's from poor decision making. The Hawks must trade Clint Capella because Onyeka Okongwu is behind him and it looks like he's ready to start. It's an obvious choice. He has less mileage, growing value, a longer contract, and is much cheaper at the moment. On top of that, another idea that has gained some traction is for them to get rid of Bogdan Bogdanovic in exchange for some future assets. It seems that one team has begun to eye him as a potential addition, and that team is the Orlando Magic, who actually seem like they would be a great fit for him to further their chances this season and give Paolo Banchero another offensive option along the wing. But if Orlando doesn't have the interest to wheel and deal with Atlanta, then there have been some talks about the Nuggets trying to bring in Bogdanovic to pair him with his Serbian teammate Nikola Jokic. Whether or not the Nuggets would be willing to part with an essential part of their core identity of their team, such as Michael Porter Jr., is yet to be seen, especially considering that they now have Twilight Russell Westbrook on their roster, and the head coach and general managers just simply don't get along with each other anymore based on the decisions that were being made. We have our own separate video on that. It's absolutely insane, and I'll leave it in the end screen for you guys. But even if the Hawks were to pull the trigger on some or all of these moves, I'm still not convinced that it would put them in a position now or in the future to achieve their desired goal of building a sustainable winner. The sad truth is that they don't really have a good route out of the situation they're in, whether they keep Trae Young around or let him go. But it all brings up a good point and actually comes full circle. If he truly is as good as numbers suggest and as good as he wants to be, then this would be the exact season that he proves it to both the league and doubters everywhere. With knocks against his lack of rigor on the defensive end, in addition to rumors of him being a poor teammate, this would be the ideal time for him to begin changing those narratives. It's important to note that the Atlanta Hawks don't get their own first-round draft pick until 2028 as a result of the DeJounte Murray trade. So you can't really tank if you're the Atlanta Hawks anyway. You have no choice but to compete, and at the same time, you don't really have a lot of assets to play with, except for the Lakers' unprotected first-round pick in 2025 and the Kings' top 12 protected pick in 2025 as well. Once upon a time, the Atlanta Hawks looked like one of the most promising teams in the NBA, with exciting young talent like Kevin Huerter, Trae Young, John Collins, and Clint Capella. The team has been completely stripped of that depth and now in its stead remains a shell of its former self. The road to getting back to where they once were is very gloomy, and it all starts with Trae Young's performance this year. Let me know in the comment section down below, how did the Atlanta Hawks get to where they once were? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.